Speaking aboard Air Force One, Trump says he has a lot of respect for President Xi as he continues his Asia tour. Trump leaves Malaysia for the second leg of his Asia tour with Air Force One departing Kuala Lumpur for Tokyo. He will meet Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanai Kataichi, on Tuesday. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva says President Trump has assured him a trade agreement can be reached to ease punitive tariffs. Lula spoke after meeting Trump on the sidelines of a Southeast Asian summit. Venezuela accuses Trinidad and Tobago of staging a military provocation with the CIA during joint exercises in the Caribbean, claiming mercenaries were caught planning a false flag attack to trigger a full confrontation with Caracas. Donald Trump says he may decide on the next Federal Reserve chair by the end of the year as the White House prepares a final shortlist. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says 5 candidates remain in the running, including advisor Kevin Hassett and current FED officials. Israel reports it knows the locations of 9 out of 13 deceased hostages still held in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel will also decide which countries can join any international force entering the enclave. Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon kill 3 people, including Hezbollah operatives accused of smuggling weapons from Syria. The attacks mark another breach in the year-old ceasefire as tensions along the border continue to rise. UN peacekeepers in southern Lebanon come under fire from Israeli forces, according to local officials. No casualties are reported, but the incident raises new fears of escalation in a region already on edge. Now we start this hour in Europe, where the governor of Russia's Belgorod region, Vanyaslav Gladskov, said that 1 person was killed and 23 others were injured as a result of numerous attacks by the armed forces of Ukraine during the day. According to the governor, the Belgorod region and districts were subjected to Ukrainian attacks. The governor has added that among 23 civilians injured, 3 were children. He noted that 2 boys were seriously injured and have undergone surgery, and that all necessary medical care has been provided in full. Meanwhile, Russia had earlier said that its forces had launched strikes on Ukrainian railway infrastructure, while Ukraine had said that its troops had hit Russian radar stations. According to the war report from the Russian Ministry of Defense, the Russian army attacked Ukraine's 147 areas, including trains used to transport weapons and equipment, and to the Donbass theatre, energy facilities and launch sites. Now we're joined by Major General Dr. Rajan Kochhar. He's a senior strategic and defense expert. He joins us live from New Delhi. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World to discuss the latest escalations in Europe's defining crisis. Of course, these just are merely the latest developments. We are reeling from another strike, numerous barrage of the Ukrainian capital of Kiev, which happened earlier on today, killing numerous civilians in the capital, where hundreds of drones flew over there. What can you tell us about the current state of that conflict, and also, of course, the diplomatic backdrop where Russia says it does want peace, but actions say otherwise?
Thank you, Thomas, for bringing me to this discussion. I don't think Russia wants peace as of now, because we can see the offensive in a very high state of tempo as far as Russia is concerned. And Donetsk, western part of Donetsk and Kharkiv areas and Sumy areas, Zaporozhye, all these areas have been subjected to a heavy assault by the Russians. So now we are seeing a kind of a riposte because you must remember that winters are approaching. And in winters, what happens is the logistic areas become extremely important. So I am seeing a kind of re-strategization by the Ukrainians and the Russians also, because both of them are trying to target energy infrastructure and logistic nodes, because these are going to become very important in winters, and especially the power supply areas and the nuclear power plants. So I see this kind of campaign, and Belgorod is only around about 35 to 40 kilometers from the border. And on the other side, north of it is Kharkiv. So if you see the area, there have been artillery strikes and drone strikes both. And it is within the artillery range of the medium guns, which can go up to 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers at times, depending upon the type of ammunition they use. So now the basic intention of the Ukrainians, I feel, is to stretch the Russian air defenses, because Russian air defenses are quite widely dispersed, and they would be testing, in this circumstance. The second aspect is that a redeployment of the Russian troops is also being aimed at. Because if you want to blunt an offensive which is going full steam, you will have to do some kind of a diversionary attack. So this I feel in military parlance, it is a kind of a diversionary attack, and it is basically aimed to redeploy the Russian troops. And as a matter of fact, if you see the Russian pattern also, Russian pattern has also been on the similar lines, because Russia has targeted the Ukrainian rail network a number of times. If you analyze the Russian part of the strategy also, 21,700 kilometers is the rail network in Ukraine, and almost 10,000 kilometers of this rail network has been damaged or destroyed by the Russians over a period of time. This has impacted the mobilization and the moving up of the logistics as far as the Ukrainians are concerned, and that is why we are seeing a similar kind of a strategy being employed by the Ukrainians, as I mentioned to you earlier, that the winters are approaching.
Yes.
And basically, the focus right now is not capture of territory, but destruction of the logistic nodes and the energy infrastructure, and that is what I am seeing actually happening as of now.
Of course, and you did mention the winter there. Dr. Kochar, how much can winter be weaponized, particularly, of course, in Eastern Europe, where, I mean, the temperatures, of course, can go way below zero. And Russia and Ukraine, of course, aim for that energy infrastructure. What's your analysis there?
You see, my analysis is, if you see the pattern of the last 4 years, and if we see the winter campaigns which have been conducted by the Russians as well as the Ukrainians, the movement of the armored columns and the movement of the convoys and the heavy vehicles becomes difficult because of the snow factor and the slushy factor and the mud and the ground terrain factors. So we actually see that in winters, the campaign is more centered on the air power, on the missiles attacks, on the drones attacks, and on targeted energy infrastructure, because this energy infrastructure in winters, if you target them, it's going to pinch, or it is going to hurt the people of Ukraine also. Because if you see a large number of people get together in metros or in such safer areas, and where centralized energy resources are available, and of course generators have also been used in abundance by the Ukrainians. But what is happening now is all these three winter campaigns, if you study, there has been a lot of destruction on the energy infrastructure in Ukraine, and I think a similar kind of a strategy is going to be employed by the Russians this time also.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Kachar, for giving us that insight on the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. We now move on over to the Indo-Pacific for our next story, where South Korean President Lee Jae-myung pledged to bolster cooperation with Southeast Asian nations to combat transnational crime, especially to root out organized criminal groups operating across the region. Speaking at the ASEAN Republic of Korea in Kuala Lumpur, President Lee said that the South Korean National Police Agency would enhance investigative cooperation with ASEAN chiefs of police to tackle rising cross-border crime networks, including scam centers that have proliferated in border areas and exploited young victims. According to President Lee, ASEAN is one of South Korea's largest trading partners, with Seoul having invested a cumulative $8.5 billion in ASEAN. He also noted that South Korean companies are driving ASEAN's industrialization and economic growth in industries such as automobiles, steel and electronics. Let's listen in to what President Lee had to say.
최근 법 집행 사각지대인 국경 지역을 중심으로 스킴센터 등 조직적 범죄 단지가 확산되고 있고 안타깝게도 많은 청년들이 초국가 범죄의 희생양이 되고 있습니다. 이에 한국경찰청은 아세아나 폴가의 수사 공조를 통해 조직적 범죄 단지를 건절하고 초국가 범죄가 이 지역에서 더 이상 발붙일 곳이 없도록 협력을 강화해 나갈 것입니다. 아세안 각국 및 아세안 차원에서의 긴밀한 형사, 사법 공조를 통한 문제 해결 또한 모색해 나가겠습니다. 이제 아세안은 한국의 3대 교역 대상이고 한국은 누적 85억 불에 달하는 ODA를 통해 아세안의 미래에 투자했습니다. 한국 기업들은 자동차, 철강, 전자 등에서 아세안의 산업화와 경제 성장을 견인하고 있습니다.
Okay, we're now joined by Dr. Sanjay Kumar. He is a journalist for the Korea Herald and he joins us live from Busan. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to have you with us, Dr. Kumar. Of course, South Korea joins a network of East Asian and Southeast Asian countries trying to root out this transnational crime, especially scam networks. What more can you tell us about South Korea's efforts to root out these criminals in that region?
Almost since last few weeks, this transnational crime issue between Cambodia and Korea has been in the center, and there has been huge backlash among the people in Korea. The sentiments are very against. There had been a kind of anger and anger in the perceptions of Koreans about Cambodians even, and the government side was also trying to somehow address this issue, and this should be seen as an extension of South Korean government to showcase a zero tolerance approach on this issue. As you have correctly mentioned, just now that ASEAN is third largest trade partner of Korea, and ASEAN and Korea, both sides want to achieve $300 billion of trade in coming years. But in order to achieve that, only comprehensive strategic partnerships won't work. This is the tone of South Korea and the South Korean people. And that is why if you see the vision of President Lee Jae-myung today that he has pointed out, he has clearly said that C means contributor. I mean CSP initiative, that vision that he is talking about is about South Korea as a contributor for ASEAN youth dream and hope. S stands for springboard for innovation and development growth, and P as a partner for stability. So to achieve these kind of vision, these transnational crimes must be taken very seriously and with zero tolerance approach. And President Lee wants to see ASEAN-Korea relations develop into a relationship with more than 15 million people of activated people-to-people ties. So if you see these visions, South Korea wants to take ASEAN along with it, but these kind of transnational crime, and many Korean youth had been suffering since years, and it is a very serious concern. It's not just about from a diplomatic thought point of view, but it has to be seen from a human rights perspective also.
And Dr. Kumar, while praising the relationship with ASEAN countries and South Korea, President Lee, he said that South Korea is driving the industrialization of Southeast Asia, and spoke of industries such as automobiles and electronics. What more can you tell us about those industries that are those South Korean industries that are thriving in those Southeast Asian countries?
Thomas, when it comes to industrial support and the Korean companies' investment in ASEAN, Vietnam has been the center in the last few years. More than 10,000 Korean companies are operating there. Singapore has been very good destination for South Korea. Malaysia also has good ties. Thailand is also trying to. If you see these countries, they want South Korean investment, and their tourism also is very much dependent on South Koreans. I forgot to mention Philippines here, and they had been in a very good relationship with South Korea. If you see the influx of the EPA workers in Korea also, ASEAN has been one of the largest beneficiaries. So if you take these things into consideration, ASEAN needs South Korea, and ASEAN countries have been having a very healthy relationship with South Korea, and so many things had been happening in the last one and a half decade. We can say just this Cambodia issue cannot undermine the potential of ASEAN-Korea relationships and the future of this relationship. So people here in Korea are very hopeful that these issues will be definitely addressed, and we can see that Malaysia as ASEAN chair is also very seriously taking this issue. And today we came to know also that Thai and Cambodia also, they like these two countries also have sorted some problems out in near the border, signing an agreement. So seeing all these, there is a positivity here in South Korea that this issue also will be tackled. But yes, the industrial cooperation as well as investments will not be affected that much. Maybe in Cambodia, of course, there are demands here in South Korea, especially in the political circles too, to minimize the ODA support. But still, it looks like the relationship has not gone up to that extent. So, but it is up to Cambodian authorities to somehow cement the ties, because it takes years, decades, and centuries to build ties. Like Rome is not built in a day. Just like that, relationships are not built in a day. So I think people-to-people contact and industrial cooperation, all these investments, they will remain intact, but there has to be some sort of zero tolerance approach from the Cambodian side also. This is what South Korea wants to listen and see it in action.
Yes, Dr. Kumar, thank you very much. Do stay with us. When we move over to the Middle East, where top Hamas official and head of the terror group's negotiation team, Khalal al-Hayya, has stated that Hamas has reached an agreement in principle with Fatah and the other Palestinian factions to establish a technocratic committee to manage Gaza. Al-Hayya stressed that an agreement was reached with Fatah on the matter, despite a statement from Fatah last week opposing the declaration by Hamas and other factions, arguing that the PLO was the proper framework for addressing the issue of temporary administration in Gaza. Al-Hayya also stated that the committee would be temporary and should lead to Palestinian elections and the formation of a Palestinian national unity government. He did not answer when such a committee might be established, saying that he could not estimate the timeline. We're now joined by Peter Baum. He's the foreign editor of the Weekly Blitz, and he joins us live from London. Peter, thank you very much for joining us here. Peter, for those who don't know, what is Fatah, what is the PLO, and what separates them from Hamas?
Very briefly, Thomas, and thank you again for having me on your programme. There are two major quasi-governments leading the Palestinians. Fatah being the legacy position of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, mainly in the West Bank, and were originally in Gaza until dethroned by Hamas, a Iranian-backed militant terrorist group who now run Gaza and have been doing so for the last 15 or so years. So it's really a geographical split, but Fatah were dethroned from their position of ruling the whole of the Palestinian demographic. So that's the main difference, and one rules in Gaza and one rules in the West Bank and the Palestinian territories within Israel.
And what does that mean for this agreement? That a top official has come forward from Hamas and said that an agreement has been reached with Fatah, that legacy group that you speak of, to establish a technocratic committee that could one day manage Gaza.
Yeah, this is very interesting, Thomas, and it really actually reverts back to what we were talking about yesterday about there being a power vacuum in Gaza and those various groups seeking to fulfill that vacuum. Now, clearly, Hamas is the main organization that wants to retain credibility, both militarily, which she may not be able to do, but certainly politically, which she may be able to do. Regarding the power vacuum, for a while, Palestinian Islamic Jihad was seeking to dethrone Hamas, but do not have the competencies or the manpower to do so. But the Arab clans, who are very opposed to the Palestinian Arab family clans, I should say, who are very opposed to both Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and backed by the Israelis, more importantly, were seeking to have some kind of role politically, which Israel would be very pleased about. However, the main players backing Hamas now are Egypt and Turkey. And it will be those two countries who, through the pressure they have brought on Hamas, clearly have forced Hamas to the table to make the statement that a form of, they would be happy to see a form of united Palestinian technocratic government governing the territories. So I really think this statement by the Hamas official has been brought about by the pressure created by Turkey and Egypt, and probably Qatar as well, and also with the solid backing of Donald Trump. So politically, it seems that Hamas could still be a credible force within the Palestinian hierarchy.
It's very interesting stuff. Thank you, Peter, for joining us here. It's a pleasure to talk to you, as always. We now move back over to Southeast Asia, where following the signing of the peace treaty between Cambodia and Thailand at the ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur, the ASEAN observers have now reached the disputed Thailand-Cambodia border, where Cambodian forces have now started to remove heavy weaponry from their side of the agreed-upon border. Thailand and Cambodia agreed on an initial truce in late July after intervention by Trump, as well as Chinese diplomats and Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, who chairs the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. A new joint declaration was signed by Thai Minister Orton and Cambodian Prime Minister Hun Manet, as well as Trump and Anwar. After the US leader landed in the Malaysian capital, 5 days after clashes erupted along Thailand and Cambodia's jungle-clad frontier this summer, as a territorial dispute triggered open combat, killing more than 40 people and forcing more than 300,000 to flee their homes. we're once again joined by Dr. Kumar to discuss this in further detail. Dr. Kumar, what more can you tell us about this update in regards to the Thailand and Cambodia ceasefire?
Well, Thomas, this whole incident reminds me of a Thai proverb which says that this water depends on boats and tiger depends on forest. I mean, it is about symbiosis. I mean, in the current geopolitical as well as the bilateral or multilateral scenarios, one country cannot stand without the support or without communicating with other countries, especially their neighbors. We are seeing in different parts of the world, we are seeing in Russia, Ukraine, we are seeing in South Asia, India, Pakistan, we are seeing in ASEAN. But what is very important here is that for ASEAN centrality, this stability is very important. And sitting in South Korea, I really feel this pain of this regional instability. So I am so happy to tell you that in my personal capacity, it is really positive for me to see this development. And President Trump should be applauded at least for engaging these two countries, and especially Malaysia also should be applauded for having such kind of accord. I mean, Kuala Lumpur Accord is a milestone in recent times if we see, because like more than 40 people already died on the border dispute. And another good news today we could hear was that Thai authorities have released 18 prisoners of war. I mean, these prisoners of war does not just mean prisoners of war. Their families are dependent on that. So, there is a human aspect. So from sitting in South Korea, I see like, President Trump, when he's coming to APEC, he should engage North Korea also. And if there is no possibility of Trump-Kim talk, at least some kind of euphoric messaging is expected right now. So I am very positive personally. And I really want to thank all those parties who were playing central role in this agreement, declaration. So this should be seen in that way. For ASEAN centrality, stability is very important, and this is a milestone in current circumstances.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Kumar, for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to have you, of course. We now move on. Japanese citizens have shared their views ahead of US President Donald Trump's official visit to Japan. Trump is set to meet Japanese Emperor Naruhito on Monday at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo, 6 years after their previous meeting during the first Trump presidency. Trump is also set to hold talks with Japan's new Prime Minister, Sanai Takachi, during his trip. Let's take a listen in to what some Japanese citizens have said about Trump's visit.
だからアメリカも単純に関税を上げたからじゃあアメリカが幸せかっつったら決してそんなこともないわけで、なんていうんですかね、落としどころっていうかやっぱり少なくとも様子見ないことにはね、この半年1年じゃあ関税上げた結果がどうなったのっていうそういう振り返りをして、そこで問題点があれば解決すべきだし、単純に今上げろ上げろで上げちゃった結果、いろんな問題も起きてるでしょうし、防衛って難しい問題ではあるんですけど、一つよりやっぱ米軍基地の問題っていうのはずっと続けて起きてることで、それがやっぱりね近くに住んでる人にとっては日々の問題であるものの、やっぱ遠くにいる人間からするとなんかもう防衛がうんぬんっていうところはもうまず身近なところで米軍基地が近くにいる人とかね、そういった方たちがどういったふうに問題を捉えているかっていう、そこを共通認識として持った方がいいんじゃないかな。
期待しているのは行動力がありますので、何か日本にいい方向に行ったらなと思ってます。直接関税問題が発生している業界に勤めてはいないので、あくまで聞いた話にはなるのですが、日本もアメリカも両方、これならいいだろうというどこか及第点みたいなところを見つけられたらと思います。
Well, that's all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.